afternoon or good morning, depending on what time zone you're calling in from today. My name is Eric Bowling. I'm with IPC Technologies, and I just wanted to welcome everyone today to IPC's Customer Training Webinar Series. Just as a reminder, these training sessions are free to all of our customers as part of our continuing education initiatives. In looking at the list of participants, it looks like we have a wide mix of wireless customers, wired customers, some prospects, large customers, small customers. So today should be very educational and insightful for our IPC friends and family. As a reminder, we do record these sessions. So if you would like to review the content that we deliver or share with another coworker, they will be up on our YouTube channel shortly after today's session. And then just a quick review of the format. Today, the presentation is about 45 minutes. We don't try to get too deep, but we do want to leave some time for Q&A at the end. I do want to encourage folks to ask questions along the way. In the GoToWebinar sidebar, you should be able to submit your questions. I'll be monitoring those throughout the presentation so we can handle them along the way or save them to the end. It just depends on the types of questions that you have. So, and then if we need to follow up any private or personal follow-ups as required, we can do that after the session. So let's jump right into it. Let's see here. Okay, so today's session, let's make a ruckus. All right, so we're going to be talking today about just the amount of data that is out there on our devices, the plumbing of the network, right? The wireless, the IoT devices, the networking, internet connections, all the things that come into play. You know, you just think about this simple webinar, all the devices that are part of this webinar, from my PC through my internet connection, my home router. I am COVID-19 ready, sheltering in place, working out of my home office today, as I imagine many of you are as well. Through the full gamut of devices that deliver this service. Well, if those devices are not performing well, right? I've got a Wi-Fi network that I'm here on. If it were not performing well, my audio may sound bad. Well, how do I see the behavior and the performance of items that I can't put my hands on? I can't grab the Wi-Fi and say, how are you doing? I need tool sets to be able to help me facilitate those things, down to the networks and the interconnections between my multiple locations. Some of our folks who have joined us today are multi-site, 10, 20, 50 site locations that have large infrastructures that they need the insight to be able to do analytics, to troubleshoot, because you know what, sometimes plumbing just doesn't work like it's supposed to, right? We get traffic jams, cloud items go down, routing changes, somebody makes a firewall change, all the things that can happen in the day-to-day operations of even the smallest network to the largest network can be overwhelming. And so today, what we want to do for our customers, we have some Ruckus customers on there. Ruckus is our preferred Wi-Fi product under the CommScope banner. We also have some ICX customers on the line. ICX is the wired network preference, again under the CommScope umbrella. But what we want to talk about is how do we make sense of this? How do we perform maintenance and management of, and more importantly, the analytics and how we troubleshoot when the plumbing goes bad? Okay, so what we're trying to do is we're trying to show our customers, if you don't yet utilize this tool, this may be something you want to add, or maybe you already have this tool, but maybe you're just not using it to its full potential, or maybe you have no tool at all and you're starting to window shop about options that you can look for. So today we have MJ Everson from CommScope. He is part of the Ruckus team at CommScope, and we're very glad to have him join us. But before we get to his presentation, I do just want to make you aware of the full scope of what IPC, along with CommScope, can offer to our customers. So, as I mentioned, there's a lot of customers in sort of the bottom two layers here that have the ICX platform for their networking, or the access points for the wireless infrastructure. Several of you are in sort of the control and management phase, and maybe you're just not utilizing the tool to its full capacity. But that's really the area where we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the top two layers here of the networking software and software as a service portfolio that's offered through CommScope that can help you sort of make sense of your wired and wireless infrastructure. And to do some really neat things with analytics and troubleshooting. So I'm going to quit talking. I just wanted to make sure everybody understood the full scope of our capabilities. And so what I am going to do now is I'm going to turn over the screen sharing. If I can find my mouse here, there we go. I'm going to change the presenter. MJ, you should have presentation rights now, so you can begin presenting. Switch that over. Did that come over to you correctly?
Not yet, no.
There, oh, yep, there we go. Should be now.
Just gonna.
I was talking to MJ earlier today, and he's got one of those funny accents. I was asking where he was from, and he said Zimbabwe. I thought that was just cool.
Yeah,
you don't meet people from Zimbabwe that often, MJ. So it's good to you know. My kids, we hosted a student one summer from South Africa, and the kids just fell in love with their accent. So I had to change Siri to speak the South African accent just so because it reminded her of it. So it was kind of funny. Anyway, I digress. You go ahead and take over.
No, not at all. So thank you, Eric, for that introduction. I come from back east, as they say, and been here for 30 years. Been doing networking for not quite that long. I started out as a programmer, actually, and I have an engineering. I'm an electrical engineer, actually. That's where my background is. When you look at, architectures, I just want to briefly talk about this slide. I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes, and hopefully everybody can see the slide. So it's just how you manage a network. So when you think about where we've all come from, so the 802.11 standard was ratified in 1997, which was quite a way ago, and it was before year 2000. We all remember year 2000, right? And we thought the world was going to come to an end. And
dot bomb.
And what we did back in those days, 802.11, it was 802.11, then we had B and G and a bunch of other little letters that came after that along the way until now, where we have AX. Initially, we would just manage devices as single point elements, and you'd have to run around. If you had 300 access points in your network, you had to run around 300 times and make a change. And then a company called Airspace kind of came up with this idea of managing it with a controller, and everybody kind of thought that was a good idea. We've all been doing the same thing. And that controller has just evolved and changed over the years. And so we still have physical controllers, on the left-hand side. It's a box because some people like boxes. They want to go over and look at the blinking lights on it, and that's cool. That's fine. But that box could be virtualized. Could be run on a workload on Hyper-V or VMware, whatever it might be. And that's actually a great thing to do, because when you think about a box, when you buy a physical appliance, you're kind of bound to whatever the compute power of that box is when it was actually originally conceived of and developed and designed. Whereas with a hypervised workload, you can just give it more resources, give it more memory, give it more disk space, give it more CPUs, and it can actually evolve and scale with the enterprise as they move. And so on the left-hand side, controllers, physical controllers. We don't talk about the middle one, Ruckus Cloud, today. And all we have as a company have done is we've taken Smart Zone and we've put it in a public service. And we have many of them probably back there. I mean, there's thousands of APs being managed by Ruckus Cloud these days. And all we do is just allocate more resources. And we took the interface, the native interface that Smart Zone has, and we've pared it down to what most customers are looking for when they want to look for a cloud implementation. Most organizations who are heading in a cloud direction are looking to simplify their lives, to declutter the stuff they've got scattered around the network. And along with that decluttering and simplification is the ability to just tweak the 100 things they want to tweak. They don't want to look at the 1,000 things that you possibly could do. And so we haven't exposed inside cloud the 1,000 things that you could tweak and turn and mess with, and even potentially hurt your network with by adjusting if you didn't know what you're doing. So cloud is a very focused implementation, but embedded with it is a wealth of analytics that comes along with it. Then over on the right-hand side, Unleashed. So that's really a zone director. We had two controllers. Ruckus was sort of started in 2004. Where we came from was we were trying to develop the ability to send HD video over Wi-Fi. And if you think back to 2004, Wi-Fi was 802.11g back in those days. Not the greatest thing, I mean, it wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed, shall we say, but it was better than not having a tool at all. So being not connected by a wire was better than having one, but it wasn't a great tool. So, and over the years, we as a company tried to focus on how to make that tool a better tool. And probably the most significant thing we did is BeamFlex, a technology called BeamFlex, where we have the ability to take off-the-shelf silicon, the same silicon that every vendor out there buys from the same place that we do, and we plug it into an active adaptive antenna system. Makes our access points focus signal, so we can actually point and identify where a user is in a two-dimensional way. Sometimes three. It's mostly two-dimensional. And so if you think of a building looking like a clock, and the access point sitting in the middle of the clock, if they're off at 10 o'clock, I can focus the signal to where they are at 10 o'clock out in that direction, as opposed to sending the signal across the entire clock, which is way most people do it these days. Now, a standard change came out with 802.11ac that allowed you to do a thing called beamforming, not to be confused with BeamFlex. Beamforming requires drivers and it needs things, the computer has to support it. We've been doing BeamFlex on 802.11g and N long before these things were even thought of. So I thought, just to give you an idea, so we're going to focus in the middle on Ruckus Cloud, and what is behind Ruckus Cloud is Smart Zone. So I'm going to hop out of here.
Yeah, so I think many of our wireless customers can probably appreciate the capability of the BeamFlex, right? The best way I've heard it explained is, right, it's instead of a single light bulb in the middle of a large room, which is what a typical AP does, these are like thousands of little flashlights that are focused in on the clients and can actually follow them around. It's a very dynamic technology that allows us, IPC, to actually deliver better coverage with fewer APs in most environments. A lot of times people say, hey, I need 20 APs. And I say, well, why did you need 20? And they said, well, because the other guy, the competitive proposal, needed 20. And I said, well, let me come in and do some assessment, because generally, because of that technology, where we're not just the light bulb, and you've seen it, right? Or if you've ever been camping, right? The further away you get from that campfire, you can sort of see less and less and less, and things become not as clear. But if you had 1,000 little flashlights coming at you, it would be much more impactful. And that's sort of a good analogy to the BeamFlex technology.
Yeah, it's a great one. So, your access points, for example, an R710 has over 4,000 different antenna patterns in it. It's not anything anybody has to worry about. We optimize which one to use based on RSSI, receive signal strength, noise, error rates, and things like that. And so we will dynamically change that antenna pattern based on where the client is and where the client is moving to. So those antenna patterns actually change. I've actually walked around buildings doing surveys even, and I've got a device in my hand that gives me, the received signal strength, and I can see it dropping down. Although I'm not really moving away from the access point, logically, in a dimensional way, but I'm going down a hallway, there are more obstructions in the way, and what happens? It may have to go through a couple more walls or whatever it might be, and I can all of a sudden see it pop up. It's because the access point has actually found another antenna pattern that actually was a better one from the one I was using. So we're continuously changing which antenna patterns, and these antenna patterns are combinations of vertical and horizontally opposed antenna patterns. Because that's the other thing a lot of organizations, a lot of designers of networks forget, is that you always think about the access point that is, sitting, hanging on a ceiling, plugged into a PoE port, is running at full power, and does, it always has full power, and it's talking to a wireless, usually a battery operated wireless device that is in some state of flatness. And that device, often if it's a portable, very portable device like an iPad or a Galaxy Tab or a phone, can be held in lots of different orientations. And so, when you build a piece of hardware like a phone, you're going to orientate the antenna along one of the axes, the vertical horizontal axis of the device. And so if I'm holding, say, the phone vertically because I'm reading email, and then somebody sends me a link and it's a YouTube, and I don't want to watch it in the the crunchy little screen. I'm going to flip it on its side so I can see whole screen of what's going on. Just that 90-degree flip reorientation of the phone actually reduces the signal to 1/8 of what it was the first time. So those antenna patterns, part of BeamFlex, we have over 100 patents revolving around that whole technology. That allows me to choose a different antenna pattern that changes the orientation of the signal so that client can actually get a better signal.
Yep.
So this is the interface. When you log into cloud Wi-Fi, this is what you see. This is the dashboard. So I actually don't use it as a production network. I'm working in my home lab, and I just threw some traffic on it this morning to try and show you some stuff. I was actually doing something. Oh, my session expired, so let's just log back in again. I'm just going to change the scale because there's actually some traffic. I was doing a demo last week, so I actually had some traffic in last week too. So what you see here is a map. So and this map. So if you've got an organization that's got multiple locations, then they will all show up because each location, we call them venues. You identify where they are, and so I'll end up with this pair drop, as it were, scattered across the map. So since this is just an only single location, that's why I only have one of them. And you hover over this, it kind of gives you an idea of what's in there. Across the top is sort of your headlight green, your red light, green light section. So there's one venue. If I had more than one venue, I'd have a number in here, and then this might be a different color. It might have sections, like there might be a venue that's got an orange in it because there's some issues going on. Since all the venues there are no errors, no alarms in any of the venues, then everything's nice and happy. And then devices, I've got.
So MJ, how do you define venue? Help us understand what a venue sort of encompasses. Is that a location or a SSID? How do you define that?
A venue is a location. It could be, so if I have a multi-campus building, a venue could be a building. If I have a multi-location organization, a venue could be a location. It's purely driven by how you want to define it. So if you're used to Smart Zone, then it's similar to a zone in Smart Zone.
Gotcha.
So it gives me a logical grouping of devices in a particular location. So I can, by venue, I can advertise. If I go over here, I can advertise different SSIDs in different venues. So it allows me to aggregate both hardware and soft configuration kinds of things like SSIDs or wireless LAN networks. So I have devices, so switches and Wi-Fi access points. I've just got a single access point here because I had to be able to connect to it somehow, and a physical switch. In fact, I just added the switch in about 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago. And then there are two clients. So I actually put a couple of clients in this network, and that's what's actually generating this traffic. We'll sort of drill down in this a little bit. So right up here, I can add a venue, I can add a network device, I can add a network. So if you'd ever looked at cloud Wi-Fi, we actually now call it cloud managed, because we're now managing both access points and switches. So it didn't make a whole lot of sense to call it cloud Wi-Fi anymore. So it's actually cloud managed, or just Ruckus Cloud. So I've got a venue sitting here, and if I hop in here, I can click on a venue, and it's going to show. I imported a map and dropped an AP about where it is. And this is a bogus address. That's not really where I am. But just to give you an idea, so there are lots of little things you can. So all of this is sort of a high level. So I can make changes and settings here that apply to the entire venue. So I want to turn the access points off. I want to can define a syslog server for that location. I want to do some location services and define one. We don't have built-in location, but we can send location data to any external location engine that there is out there. You can manage switch settings and firewall settings and things. So this is just telling you, actually what addresses I need to have open. So it's just saying, if I've got a firewall, this is what I need to have open. So you can add floor plans. So if I had a multi-story building, I could actually add a second floor. If I've got unplaced devices, it says there's one. There's actually I've got a switch here, which I'm actually going to drag it on the network here somewhere. Let's put it in this little office over here. But it's it's going to tell you about things like that. There's a little message down here saying it's placing on the network. It's done. So I've got an access point and a switch in this situation. When you look at devices, so it's got two tabs. You notice here. The first one are access points. I can click on access point. It takes me to where it is. If I scroll down, it's going to give me some information about what's going on. So this is to from traffic. The last 24 hours, then I can change the scale, 7 days, 30 days. You can, if I want to go edit the access point, so there are a couple of things, I can rename it. I can apply it to a different location, to a different venue. I can move it. They've got this concept where you can actually create groups if you want, which you have to create the groups in the venue, and then you can. So for example, if I had a venue, my venue in my case was buildings, and I wanted to have 3 buildings, I could just create 3 groups to represent the 3 buildings for that particular venue. So there's a lot of flexibility in how you can sort of sort and organize different assets. So in the same venue, on the same device, I can look at clients that are connected to that device. So there's just 2 here. There's a Galaxy tab, and I'm not sure what this is. It probably went to sleep.
That's good. That's good, MJ. There was a question about how the question was, I have a user who frequently complains about bad Wi-Fi coverage, and so you could essentially use this tool to determine which AP they were connecting to.
Correct.
And looking at the performance. The performance metrics associated with that connection. Yeah, so what you can do is you have that user who says, hey, my Wi-Fi in the corner office is no good. Now this gives you the insight to be able to drill down to that specific user, to that specific location, AP, floor, user, and get specific metrics all from the cloud solution. That's pretty powerful. That's neat. That addresses one of the questions.
So then it gives you a lot of, so on this particular user, it's giving me what the receive strength is. I've got this AP cranked all the way down, so it's not irradiating me. So, but it gives me some profile information, traffic volume, whether which radio I'm sitting on during different times of the day. It gives me information about the kind of traffic. It even drills down into some syslog type stuff. When I associated, when I disassociated. So that sort of information. And we're actually going to drill down and it's a lot more. So if I was to change this view to the last 7 days, now notice it's going to change everything for the last 7 days. And so, because in order to generate the traffic just in the last 24 hours, you'll notice that all the traffic is just Comcast. I'm actually just streaming Xfinity TV on an iPad to generate some traffic. And there's some other in here, but it's so small that it's not relevant. So I just thought if I go to here and just do the last 7 days, so I actually was doing a better job at generating different kinds of traffic, Hulu, Comcast. We have a DPI, the Deep Packet Inspection Engine, on all access points. So we try to understand what the protocols are, what the traffic is. So, and you notice since I was on networking devices, and I clicked on this access point and those clients. When I clicked on clients, it takes me down to users, which is where it's in the same place. So so these are devices. So what about actual wireless networks, the things that sort of the glue that makes this all work? So there's one SSID here right now. So if we just hop in here and take a look at it, you notice there are lots of little graphics and images to kind of explain. This is just a pre-shared key SSID because it was the simplest thing at the time to set up. And notice that if I change these scales, it redraws everything for this traffic. When we looked at that scale over here for the AP, if that access point had several SSIDs on it, that would be aggregating across all those SSIDs. Now, since I've focused on one particular SSID, one wireless network, it's now giving me the traffic and the traffic profile for just that one network here, which in this case happens to be the same because I've only got a single SSID here. So it'll tell me which APs are operational on that SSID. So you have a whole list here which you can sort. So all of these columns are sortable. I can sort them by venue, by the number of clients. So I can actually change this row of columns are also, I can modify them, so I can hide things. So I can say, well, actually, I don't really care about these. And, I don't have AP groups, so let me just get rid of that. So, it'll open up more space. So you can obviously filter. I can filter by, areas where I've got APs that have issues. They might be offline, online. I can filter by venue. And obviously over here, I can filter by groups if I'd had some groups configured. If I go back to wireless network again, and then if I go edit this is just a really simple SSID. It's got a pre-shared key in it, and I'm going to create a couple of SSIDs so you can see what the options are and actually how simple it is to create another network. So it's applied to a venue. If I unclick this, then it's no longer applied to the venue. I wouldn't do that right now because that'll actually knock me off this network, and the demo might stop. Then I can, here are some different things. So this is where, if I wasn't using dynamic pre-shared keys, dynamic VLANs, if I'm using 802.1x, for example, you'd see something in here which says dynamic VLAN, where I actually get the VLAN assignment from the radius server, for example. Here it's just a pre-shared key, so I can actually just assign it. I can change things. I can, change how I rate and how I load APs. I can rate them by what the maximum rate is. I can adjust, how many clients per radio. I can create policies. So if I want to block traffic and I want to say, well, these guys in this network, I don't want them going to this particular host or this subnet, I can actually apply rules here. So I just want to show you this. Give it a name, apply it. Pick the protocol if there's a different protocol. I can here, for example, enable client isolation. That's always a good thing. Client isolation stops one client from talking to another client. It's a very positive thing on, for example, an open SSID. If you had a BYOD SSID in a network, I'd actually want to prevent clients from talking to each other because that would stop somebody from sitting out in the parking lot trying to hop on my network and then trying to glean some information off the network by looking at users who are on this open SSID, because it's by definition an open SSID most of the time has to be open because it's very challenging to, you know, to get a pre-shared key or a passphrase to, you know, a device that you don't own, unless you're using something else. Like if you're using a tool like CloudPath, we have a tool called CloudPath that allows me to onboard a user, and they jump on initially on an open SSID, but once they get authenticated to the network, they end up on a secure network. It's encrypted, and so then that wouldn't help the guys sitting in the parking lot. You can hide SSIDs.
We've seen that in some of our larger, you know, we've just seen that in some of our larger campus-based implementations where the CloudPath, it's sort of a self-provisioning portal for guest access where someone can come on, enter in some information, get a text message or an email with their credentials to log into the Wi-Fi. They get access for the day. It's kind of a guest network type of thing. That's what the CloudPath product that MJ was referring to.
Yeah.
We have some customers on that, some considering it, but that's a neat tool. Very simplifies your guest network process and procedures for sure.
Highly customizable. You can create almost any onboarding journey to cover almost any scenario. So very useful tool. You know, if you do this, it disables the really old clients. You can change things like, you know, BSS min rates. What that does, you know, the higher you make this number, the sooner the client will roll, but will roam to another access point. You have to make sure you got a good site survey, because if your site survey wasn't done to handle this kind of, you know, roaming at this speed, then you might leave holes. So it just requires some thought. But you know, there's a lot of things you can actually do here. So let's just
there was a question. Yeah, there was a question. It says down left-hand side under switch configuration. The question was what are some of the capabilities off of the wired switches versus the wireless? Maybe speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, could we hold that question for 1 second?
Sure. Yep. Absolutely.
I just want to create a couple of networks. So I've got this open one. So I just want to show you what this is. I'm going to add another one. Let's just call it a BYOD. And then you notice what these are the choices. So I've got a pre-shared key, which is one we were using. I could do, you know, enterprise AAA, you know, 821X, which would make sense for BYOD unless you wanted to put every user in your Active Directory, whatever it might be. CloudPath, like we natively, you know, use CloudPath if you want. Captive portal, like this is an interesting one here. So let's just do that. So which is what covers most situations. So I can do click through. I could do a self-sign. So click through would just, you know, I'd be presented with an acceptable use policy. I'd click on it, and then I'm on the network, which that's the minimum thing you should ever do. You know, you should have that as a minimum on any access to any network where people are walking in off the street or people you don't know who they are, because, you know, as employees, we are usually signing confidentiality statements or acceptable use statements within the organization. But when you have guests, you don't normally, you know, you don't have that pre-existing relationship with them most of the time, and so they need to agree to something.
Yeah, very common in like Starbucks or airports,
yes.
That type of thing. So, yep.
You know, self-sign in. So this could be, you know, I'm going to self-sign in and get an SMS text. So built into Cloud Wi-Fi is a Twilio account, so you don't have to set up SMS. You don't have to do any of that stuff. We'll actually send, you know, all the information that the user, you know, the user requested. They'll actually ask them for their phone number. They'll put their phone number in, and what will happen is we'll send back to that phone number a text message saying, here's your code. It's a 6-digit code. You type it in, you're on the network. Host approval would be just send an email to somebody or a text to somebody inside the organization, and they would reply, say, yeah, okay, they let them on. Guest pass would be just you have somebody sitting at the front desk and they generate a series of guest pass codes and they just hand them out when people walk in. That's what that is. And then third party, this would be if you've bought a service from somebody. Purple does this. Lots of organizations actually have services where they will host the captive portal for you instead of here. And you do that because, well, actually I want to grab an email and I want to grab this. I want to do some other things, and I think that's useful. So I actually want to then use that for developing mailings and all kinds of other things. If I do a self sign-in, if I do this one, and let's just go to the next screen, we actually have built into it Facebook, Google, Twitter, LinkedIn. You can also add SMS tokens. So cloud Wi-Fi, Converge Cloud has an email service in it, so we can actually send emails for you. So you can grab, should I say, an SMS, Twilio account, so you can actually send text messages with tokens. If you use Facebook or Google, Twitter, LinkedIn, at that point you kind of know you've got a real email address, right? Because if you just ask the user for an email address, they could put anything in there. As long as if I don't have to send them something, I'm just gathering it from information's point of view, so that I could use it for recruiting or marketing or whatever it might be. Using one of these, I actually have the ability to do something with it. So let's just continue here. Now, I'd have to set up you have to actually set up the APIs. You have to get tokens from each of these organizations to use them, which I'm not going to do at this point. So the language, there's lots of languages you can pick in here. You can actually put a text in there saying, welcome to such and such a network, whatever it might be. You can actually import some images if you like. Little question marks, if you hover over them, give you some information about what's going on. So terms and conditions, I can actually put terms and conditions in here. So acceptable use policy could be in here, but not like the one you get when you fly on an airplane. The one you fly on an airplane is 50 pages long and nobody ever reads. Whereas this one, should be 4 or 5 lines, sort of outlining in very clear terms as to what is construed as acceptable behavior on this network. So now I'm going to apply it to a venue, and it's going to give you a little summary, and I'm going to create it. And it's going to go off to its little thing. There's a little informational dialog at the bottom of the screen here, and there we are. It's hopefully it'll refresh and display it on the screen for me. There you go. You guys still there? Just making sure you're still there. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's odd. Yeah, just because sometimes I don't know if my network is having problems. A little delay on this end. So that's a BYOD one. If I was just going to add one more, just to give you an example. This one I'm going to make 80 to 11, just an enterprise, AAA kind of thing. So we just call this radius. And so I'm going to put in. I have to define a radius server, which I don't have one yet. Just put that in there. You can actually add a second one if you want some redundancy. It's going to ask me for a venue, and I'm going to click next. It's going to give me a summary. And then we have radius. Now I just want to hop in here and just go edit it. Just don't do that. Let's just edit the network. And you notice over here now, it's letting me use dynamic VLANs, which means I'm going to pass back to myself a VLAN that the user is going to be sitting on. You can enable, one of the things we do with Smart Zone is that we actually do band matching. So the inherent to the way a signal propagates, from the 2.4 gigahertz point of view and a 5 gigahertz point of view, the 5 gigahertz signal attenuates a lot quicker over a 2.4. And so what usually happens is that most of the users kind of just congregate on the 2.4 radio, which is where you have actually less bandwidth because you have fewer channels. Your co-channel interference might be more because you have more 1s and 6s and 11s visible in that particular location. And so we kind of ratchet back the power on the 2.4 gigahertz radio to try and make them about the same footprint, so that the user will always try to go for where better bandwidth is, and that's usually the 5 gigahertz radio. So same things you could do here. You could enable Wi-Fi calling here if you want to do that. Client isolation is always a good thing to do. Forced DHCP, which means to stop somebody coming in with a pre-assigned IP address. People are doing that are usually up to nefarious activities, and you don't want to do that. And so that's just a couple of SSIDs, just created them here. So there was a question about switches. So I just imported the switch right before we started this call. So if I go look at, so there are a way to have, so this is a configuration profile, because you notice Under network devices, I've got Wi-Fi and switches. So the actual switch is here. So if I click on it, it's going to show me where it is because I placed it on a map. Now there's actually no traffic on this switch, so it's not going to show anything because I don't have anything plugged into it. I didn't have much time to do that. It's talking about one client, and it's only seeing this client actually because it learned it through its uplink port. But it's, so it's running LLDP to discover neighbors and all kinds of things like that. So all of that sort of built into this. So when I'm managing a device, so if we go click on this guy and we just go edit it. So what can I do today? So this is the first iteration of cloud Wi-Fi, cloud management that allows us to manage switches. So we released this on March 31st, less than a month ago.
Oh wow, brand new.
So yeah, this is brand new. So as with every iteration of software offering, we actually add more features and more capabilities. So this tracks very closely to what SmartZone supports. SmartZone has been supporting switch management for about a year and about 14 months, really. I mean, I don't really count the first iteration because that was just red light, green light. It was actually, well, you got to switch, it's up. That's about the only thing we could do. We could manage configuration files. We could go grab the config. We could upload and download configs, and we could do software updates and things like that, but we couldn't do anything else. So we've actually been able to manage switches for about 13, 14 months.
That was another question. Same person who was looking for the switch piece. Is this just for ICX, or can you include other vendors into the management platform?
It's only ICX. So it's okay. and as you would probably imagine, it's only Ruckus switches and Ruckus APs. We couldn't actually go manage somebody else's access point.
Gotcha.
And to add the switch, to just let you know what I did, and that's worth saying. I think let's just talk about how you get devices on here. So what I did was I just said add a switch, typed in the serial number, and as long as the switch is running, a current version of software, 809.2 actually is the release, it will phone home. It literally does okay, and it actually contacts the registrar that we have. And the switch literally just connected to here. It went through several states. Like if I go to events, we can.
MJ, let me jump in for a second and readdress Eric's the question Eric posed. So this is set up to we've engineered this and developed this product to manage the Ruckus switches and the Ruckus access points. But IPC has the ability to see and manage almost any vendor's products through the use of well accepted and understood applications that are sort of ambiguous in terms of they don't care what manufacturer you have. They may not have all of the features and capabilities of something that's so focused like this, but they do have the ability to set traps and alarms, and the IPC organization can see those and start to respond and dig down. So we support all the Armon defined alarms and traps that are commonly used in third-party applications. So if you have a situation where you perhaps are transitioning from one vendor's switches to ours, for example, and you don't have that transition completely finished, IPC can still see and manage all of the devices in your network. Did you want to comment on that, Eric?
Yeah, so I mean, IPC we've got multiple tools in our managed service practice where we have the ability to do that for our customers. I think most of the people participating today know that of our capabilities as an organization with our managed service practice. So that is a good point of clarification. But as it relates to the Ruckus Cloud product, being able, if I want to sort of grow my own and run my own infrastructure, wireless and wired, I'm looking for a solution that can monitor, maybe not configure, right? I understand the point about configuring, but monitor multiple manufacturers through SNMP traps and those types of things. So yeah.
Yeah, the only other comment I wanted to make is there is a difference between machine learning and artificial intelligence. Those terms are thrown around quite a bit. The current state of the art is that in most instances, like as in this product, it really is machine learning to be able to go out. I think MJ referenced it earlier. I mean, these things go out and look for upstream and downstream connections, and the access points do the same thing. So there's a machine learning phase that we're in right now. Later this year, and that accumulates a massive amount of information that you can use to triage events that occur. Later this year, we'll be releasing our first instance where we actually set up the system to sort out all the problems and use artificial intelligence to recommend solutions rather than just presenting you with a bunch of information. And there are some vendors that have kind of leaped out there in advance with AI, but they're not terribly feature rich. What we'll be providing in the marketplace will be a really nuanced product based on a lot of experience, a lot of development work, and so that's coming for later this year for people that invest in this, or if you as IPC invest in this on behalf of customers to provide a managed service.
Yep. It's an interesting segue. We are getting a little bit close to the top of the hour, and I do want to honor everybody's time. MJ, maybe we could jump to the analytics portion there and spend the next, let's say, 7 to 8 minutes looking at some of those, some of the capabilities in that area. How do we make sense of all this great stuff we've configured and got running and those types of things?
That's where I was going to go.
Excellent.
And for some reason, there we go. Okay. So this, and actually, since there's not a lot of traffic here, so what I'm probably going to do is just give you a high level of this, then jump into an analytics database that's running out in Santa Clara, of actually Ruckus headquarters. So it's actually much more interesting. But so there's a dashboard here which it's taking so long to update here. But what we do is we will actually classify incidents based on this what the impact is for the user community. Like if there's a switch that's like a core switch that impacts, or a switch that's got 5 access points or 8 access points plugged into it, and it failed, then it would be a higher priority than maybe just one user having issues. I'm just not sure why this is taking so long. So let's just jump over here. So this is actually looking at Santa Clara, and so what we've got here. This is a way of demonstrating. So so these are incidents. So these are two P2s. I can click on these. It'll give me an idea of where they are. And as you drill down on these circles, you can actually see what these units are, and it's actually going to kind of give you an idea of what the device. So this is a device located in this location. If I look at a user, that's the device that's sitting in that user. So If I, all of the time scales are I can look at new clients, impacted clients. If I look at health, this is where it's most useful. I've got, I can actually create an SLA. I can say, well, actually, I want my users to, to be able to connect within 2 seconds. I want them to get at least 10 megabits a second. I want access points to be able to deliver 50 megabits of bandwidth, and I can actually change these things. I can actually slide them backwards and forwards. Since this is a live system, I don't think I want to change that. But it's then going to measure me against this SLA that I've set over here. And
that's great. I mean, for larger organizations where there's a pretty high demand on network resources, and for an IT director to be able to demonstrate wireless SLAs, that's pretty powerful. That's great.
Up here, I had 393 successful connections. I had 34 failed ones. I actually like to see them be able to click on this, but they haven't done that yet. When you look at client troubleshooting, if you got a MAC address, you can actually go find them. Actually, I don't. I wonder if I can put in. So it's just going to look for people's phones, and so if I can actually go dig down on a phone somewhere. If you click on this, it's going to give you some information about that device, which there's nothing there. It's useful. That's the problem when you look at it's not a
live demos are always fun.
Yeah, they are. Well, you just never know what you're going to get because
right.
It's actually a live.
Which is like
system.
life.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So what I should do is get some traffic here, which I'm not getting for some reason. I don't know why. So anyway, it includes a data explorer. So I can say, okay, let me go look at connection failures. That's how many connection failures there are. And so actually I want connection failure by AP model. So now I've got 8 connection failures by AP model. So let's just take that out of here. That's not that useful. By AP name, that would be really interesting. So I can figure out, well, actually this AP8 has all these failures. So it actually help you drill down, and there's some APs down the bottom here that don't have any connection issues, for example. So here's an example of something I can do. What else is worth looking? Let's look at domain. So let's just kill this. Look at zones. So let's add a zone. I've got these zones. So let me look at radios. Let's see if I want to. So I've got AP radio. So I've got 5 gigs, 2.4 gigs. I can actually look at now. Obviously, I can change the way this is represented. I could make it a part. I can change. That's not that useful. So let's do a grid. So now it's giving me, by controller. So we have all this connection information. So let's get rid of this. So this is giving me connection statistics by stage. So when I'm connecting, so I've got stats on when clients that are, bandwidth, consumption transactions based on each of these different stages, and you can change the sorts. So that when I hop over here, so this is the one.
There was one more question related to this. Is there reporting on thresholds available? So we're getting the data, we're getting the alerts. Is there the ability to real-time report when thresholds are breached?
Yeah, there is. Yes, yeah.
Excellent.
So this is
the person who asked that question. We can follow up with that.
Yeah. So this is this network. So this is actually the demo. So this is just the demo. This is this one right here. So this is actually what's built into cloud Wi-Fi. And so we dug down to the 3 clients. I've got, traffic profile based on kinds of traffic. I've got profiles based on, the max, the max traffic a particular user is doing. I can go back like to the last minute. I can do the last hour. So all of this stuff, you can actually slice this lots of different ways. If I look at client details, I think that'll find that. Nope, I actually have to put a MAC address. It's actually asking me for a MAC address, so I'd have to go find it. I don't know if there's anything in here where I switch, because that hasn't been there yet. I can look at airtime utilization. So where am I seeing problems? I've got access points that are really busy, for example. That's something to worry about. So you can actually, well, this, I can change scales here, as I mentioned. You can actually change the time frame. So if I go back to last week, last 7 days, let's do last 7 days. So it'll give me, traffic trends from the last 7 days. All right, then you can filter up here. So I don't want everything. I just want just King up. There's only one group, so it's going to look the same because it's only one location. The same information on wired, but since I'm not really generating any traffic, there's all this traffic that you see here was just the traffic that actually generated onboarding itself. So what happened is it connected to the controller, cloud controller, and then it updated the software on it and taking care of getting it on the right version of software. And so that's what's on here, since there's nothing else plugged into that switch. So that's just a quick look. So if I go back to here, one last thing I want to talk about.
Yeah, we just got about 2 more minutes, so we'll wrap it up here in a minute. This was great.
So you can, I get informational messages sent to this email address all the time. You can add other ones, so that's how you can actually get updates. Things are being missed, things are dropping off wire. You can create rules to decide when I want to be notified, when not when I'm notified, but this is actually where you create the emails. From a support point of view, it'll show me, let's go to cloud version. We handle all of the updates, but with this release, we actually now let you decide when the update occurs. Before, we would kind of just push it at 3 o'clock in the morning, and depending on what theater it was, whether it was North America, whether it was APAC, whatever it might be, with different times of day, different of the 24-hour day. You actually now, what will happen is there'll be a version sitting here. There's an update that needs to be done, and then you can say, yep, go ahead and do that, or you can say, I want to do it on such and such a time. So you actually get to pick when that update actually occurs. So I'm going to stop there since we only have 2 minutes left. So
yeah, that's an interesting architectural discussion around how customers can manage their own instance versions in a cloud solution. That's neat. It's your own private tenant, seems like. But that can be maybe that's a discussion for a follow-up. I think we've been through all the questions. I hope everyone has found this to be helpful for, the people who use the solution today. Maybe you learned a little new tip or trick on configurations or some dashboard reporting metrics. Obviously, we can do these in person and do some additional training for your specific needs and specific requirements. For those of you who have the Ruckus product but do not manage it with the cloud portal, we'd love to introduce you to that technology. There was a question earlier that is there a trial version of Ruckus Cloud, or is it just sort of you got to jump in with 2 feet?
You can actually, Roy can answer this question, but since I'm talking, I'll just answer it. Yeah, we can set up trials. We can set up 30-day, 60-day trials.
That's great.
Roy can we sort of rustle up some APs, let the customer, let whoever wants to look at it, and just literally see what it, kick the tires and see what it looks like.
That's great. Okay, very good. All right, well, thanks again, everybody. I hope that everyone is staying safe and healthy, and it is right at just under 3 o'clock, so I wanted to honor everybody's time. Hope everyone has a good rest of your Tuesday and a good spring. And don't forget to tune in. We do these every couple weeks. We have different training sessions, so you can visit ipctech.com/webinars for our next series of training. Thanks,
Thank you
everybody.
for your time. Yeah.
Yes. Thanks, MJ. Thanks, Frank. Appreciate you guys.
You bet. Thank you, guys. Take care.